Has the market changed its mind about what the Fed may do next?
We have got to get inflation behind us. I wish there were a painless way to do that. There isn't.
I think this is a two-part policy mistake of historic proportion.
I think the odds of a recession in 2023 are very high.
I think you should offer the American people an apology.
Hello, I'm Chris Crystal, and I'm with Finance Stockholm. Thank you very much. Still not a lot of good news yet to report, but the market is continuing to be shaky globally. And we have here in Sweden, we have the first month where we're coming into the first month where homeowners and their electricity bill will be just about equal. So they're getting a double burden. There is a chance that we get a lowered electricity rate in the south of Sweden anyway, as of Monday. That was in Svenska Dagbladet. And we still don't see a government yet formed. We have a lot of elections or selections going on. But as the longer it takes for a government to get in place, the more uncertainty there will be on the Swedish Kronor, and that will probably impact the crown, as well as you see many of the companies are coming out with their profit warnings, and you see many of the analysts that are at least Nordic-based and many of the international-based lowering the ratings. If you look at what's happened in Europe recently, you see that you had what's being called the far right in Italy, and this what some are calling the far right here in Sweden, coming up and getting more votes from the electorate. And while everybody wants to ignore the problems that they're trying to address and the reason why the parties against them lost, you just have to go back and look at it and just say denial ain't just a river in Egypt, because you have this the issues that they're addressing are about safety and about crime and about standard of living. So while many would be against this, you do see what looks like a crumbling of the EU. So you already had Brexit. You've had some people like in France or even in Sweden, and now you see this Italian movement where some are suggesting that they leave the EU. And as we already know, we saw that in Brexit, and you see different economic policies going forward in an attempt to strengthen the economy in England. And so we'll wait and see what happens in Italy, and we'll wait and see what the reaction is from the EU. We already saw that the EU is going to, or had said way back in April, that they were going to pull back funding of 7.5 billion from Hungary because of corruption and the apparent Viktor Orban, and what he was doing with contracts to his family. And so we may see similar effects going into place against Italy. Now, that would probably drive them further away. Hungary is not yet left, but Hungary obviously has strong ties with the Russian government. And while we're coming into winter, and you see countries like Amsterdam shutting down their gas production in front of the winter, and you already see for Sweden, homeowners having equal costs to own their home and run their home, you're going to see a shift in attitude. And they can continue to ignore the issues and exacerbate them, but it becomes very dangerous for the scenario of the EU. And if you look at the Swedish trading partners, both for our exports and our imports, Germany is our largest. Italy is not in any of our top 5. We do a lot with automobiles on the import and export. We do a lot with medicinal packaged products for our exporting. So we are selling a lot of drugs and pills and other products, but those would be, some to think about. We have a large truck manufacturing, Volvo trucks, and we also are making cars, and we're also importing cars. So that automobile sector, which is getting a lot of downgrades here in Sweden this morning, and auto-related suppliers like SKF for the ball bearings getting downgrades, the Swedish economy is going to be under pressure. And we've yet to see what this will do to the housing market. It's already had a negative impact And you see advertisements or articles discussing that the home viewing is going down dramatically. This is typically that season where you've already seen that schools and families are looking forward and not looking to sell. A lot of the sell period comes towards the spring or right after Christmas. And so it's developing, but not in any positive trends. In terms of currencies, Swedish investors that are in AP7, our large pension fund here, which is government controlled, are getting the benefit of the strong dollar. You do see China having difficulty propping up the yuan, and their Belt and Road initiative is impacted because there's a larger number of countries that are in financially distressed situations. So today it's around 60%. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. And if you go to Project Syndicate, you can find Carmen Reinhardt, who is a famous economist who has written quite a bit about these distressed financial countries. And in 2010, that level of distressed financial countries was only, I think it was 10%. So excuse me, it was 5%. So you see a dramatic shift in the countries that have taken on the Belt and Road Initiative from China, set up loans with China, and gone on with projects, and Chinese banks starting to have problems. Z has made comments about the Belt and Road Initiative, and there is a strong desire not to have any losses. So we'll see how that develops, but certainly there will be pressure on the EU. EU was, I believe at this time last year, the largest trading partner with China and had overtaken the US. So the development there will be tenuous, or not tenuous, but a little fractured and going forward. So it'll have some weak spots. And of course, you have these member states that may or may not have stronger ties with Russia and may or may not see more favorable gas supplies, and them saying they're not going to abide by sanctions. Now that's a long term down the road, or it would take a little bit to do that. But these are things to think about, and how this would affect Sweden, because our largest trading partner is Germany. And so if the German economy slumps, which it already is, we're looking at a worsened situation here in Sweden, especially with no energy relief or electricity relief in sight. Now, we do have a little bit of good news. NCC, one of our construction companies here, has announced that they're getting a 900 million Swedish kronor to build apartments, so roughly a little bit less than 90 million euros to build apartments in Mariestad, which is great. And then, of course, as we come to the end of summer, there's an article about solar power and solar power generation from a company called Svea Solar, which has seen a very strong growth. And they are talking about 20 to 25% of power generation in Sweden coming from solar. And that's a great idea. But they do have a timeline of 20 to 25 years to get that 20 to 25%. And in Sweden, our energy ministry has given a discount or a tax rebate to purchasers of home solar panels. So you can invest up to 250,000 Swedish kronor in this technology or resource to power your home. More often than not, it goes through the power companies, and they come out, they measure your roof, they give you the estimate, but they also give you a allotted amount of solar panels that you're allowed to get. So you can't just completely coat your house with solar panels so you could run without any issue. They tell you, well, no, your percentage use or your average consumption of electricity is this, so we're not going to give you more than that. We're going to give you just a little bit less or that much so that you can generate that much power for your house. And then you can sell it back to the spot market, or you can sell it back to the market at the spot price. And they're obviously not selling their electricity at the spot price. They're selling it with a little bit of a nice spread. And so they capture the spread on the homeowner's sale of a product that they've already purchased for their own consumption. And then the homeowner doesn't really get the benefit of the full profit. So that's one of the problems with the solar power and for many of the homeowners who look to buy this. Then you also have to convert the electricity from direct power to alternating power. So you need to install an inverter box. And then you also need to install batteries so that when the daylight has run out, you have the storage of that electricity. And then you have to buy those from a company. Very often it's not the same company that installs your solar panels. And then very often the solar panel company will not give you any sort of warranty on the batteries because they say, well, we can't regulate and it's not our product. So we don't know that those batteries can really work with our solar panels. So for the consumer, it's a tricky issue. And the average consumer would have to spend around 200,000 Swedish on the solar panels, and then they have to pay for the batteries, and then they have to pay for the inversion box to be installed, and they need to pay for the electrician. So they need to buy the box, they need to pay the electrician, they need to install that, they need to plug in batteries that work with the inverter box, and they need to plug in batteries that plug into the solar panels. So anywhere from 150,000 Swedish to 200,000 Swedish to do just the simple part of the solar panels and the inverter box. And then you have additional money, and then they get a rebate of up to 250,000 Swedish crowns, but they only get a max amount of 50,000. So they get a total of 50,000 crowns back if they spend 250,000. You don't get 50,000 back if you spend 100. You get closer to something like between 10 and 20. And that's a tax setup through the energy ministry, which then tells the tax authority that this consumer has applied and this consumer has met this standard. So it's a very expensive proposition, and it's ironic that it's all coming out now at the end of summer, but they're timing it with the increased price in electricity. So really, I guess what you're looking at are the individuals that will take on these products will actually be financially secure, but they're looking at a minimum of a 3-year period to a 5-year period before they really start making money back on their investment. They do get an immediate lowering of cost of electricity consumption, and I think Svea Solar would probably have put that in the marketing plans as an estimate for why they could accelerate sales. But if this project to get more solar power would really get to 20-25%, you would really need to see some sort of business incentive, because businesses get no break from the tax authorities or the energy authority to actually do this. So it's kind of cut off at the knees if you're only going after the consumers. We're only a country of 10 million people. And then of that 10 million of the homeowners, how many would actually decide to invest an additional 200,000 Swedish into their house to get this technology? So it's a tricky question. It's a lofty goal on the 20-25%. But if you look at what the average solar cell is producing today in the energy conversion ratios, and of course it functions better in cold as opposed to the hot summer, you need to have better than 25%. You want something closer to 43%, where you're getting that energy conversion from the sunlight. So it's still a very expensive proposition, and it's questionable how fast this will go through without further incentivization or radical improvement in the technology or dramatic efficiency levels achieved. But also in the Swedish market, what we see is that you have somebody like Carnegie Private Banking is recommending the banks because they're all raising rates, so they'll make more money. And then also you see them recommending from Karl Hedberg, the pharmaceuticals or healthcare industry. And if you just look at the profits from companies like AstraZeneca on vaccinations, you get an idea for why they look like those will be continued strong earners. And then, as I said, we have a majority of our trade exports going out in medicinal packaged products, that would be a continued stream of business. So it's not looking that good for us right now in Sweden. In Europe, you see this increased fear about which direction the EU is going to be able to go. And really, it comes down to, will the political parties listen to their voters, or will they only listen after they get voted out? So the next big step will be what happens in Germany as we approach the cold winter. They already had to go through the summer with cold showers and lack of sleep, street lights. They had pools shut down in the middle of a heat wave because of the energy cost. So, and then Holland has now shut down their North Sea gas yesterday. So this is these are dramatic steps and will lead to dramatic issues. You know, we already talked about Italy, but you know, in Italy, I think it was in Italy and Czech Republic where you had the first bill burning. So they were burning their electricity bills to say we're not going to pay. And then, so countries like England, where you've had similar discussion about, should we burn our bills? Should we pay them? You had something like 100,000 people saying they weren't going to be able to pay their electricity bills. And then on top of that, with England, you have a new prime minister coming in and trying to start the economy. And she says, okay, I'm going to cut taxes. Now everybody says, okay, this is terrible. You can't cut taxes. You're going to cut your revenues. But if you look at the United States, and I talked about this, you look at something called Hauser's Law. Every time a presidential administration has made these significant tax cuts, you've seen an increase in revenues directly applied to the industries that were previously being taxed. And for those who think that's just a Republican talking point, you can look back at Bill Clinton, you can look back at John F. Kennedy, and there are others where these were Democrat presidents who cut taxes, and then you saw economic development and tax revenues go up on lower tax cost because there were more transactions to add to the tax revenue. So keep that in mind when you're looking at countries like England. And although Sweden doesn't do a lot with England and Italy as in terms of major trading partners, you never know how things develop. But we're looking at a weakened economy in Europe, and we're looking at a weakened economy in Sweden. So we'll try to find some good news and some good topics to look for. But obviously, the Swedish crown versus the dollar, it does look like the crown continues to go lower, and it does look like the dollar is on a bit of a breakout. So that would be something to consider, and you can look at the AP7 and their holdings in dollars to get maybe a bit of a better view and what you'd want to do. So that's it from us at Finance Stockholm, and we'll wish you a great day and best of luck in the markets. Okay, thank you. Bye.